Hi everyone, my name is Wevyn Muganda. I am the host of Swaiba, the podcast, the Audible African Woman. I am excited to be hosting a friend of mine and a colleague that I have known for a while in peace and security. Her name is Wevyn Muganda, and I will read her bio before we get into the conversation. Wevyn, asante. If you allow me, I will read your bio so that people can know who I am speaking to today. So Wevyn Muganda is a human rights activist from Mombasa, Kenya. She currently works with the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders, that is GNWP, as a Cora Weiss Peacebuilding Fellow. Through her blog, Beyond the Lines, that most of you might have seen on social media, she's changing and disrupting the narratives of world extremism through raising awareness and educating online community on how to enhance peace and security. In 2019, Wevyn received the She Can Award for her outstanding work in advancing human rights and increasing access to justice for women affected by violence. She co-led Mutual Aid Kenya, a COVID response initiative that supported communities in informal settlements of Mombasa and Nairobi with essential supplies, educational materials, and through political participation. She's part of the UNDP's Global Youth Program, 16 by 16, that supports 16 activists from all over the world in advancing SDG 16. She also serves in the advisory board of Mombasa Women's Social Justice Center, and she's passionate about peace and security and development. Wevyn, karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
I am happy that we could make it and that you were able to come to Nairobi eventually.
Yeah.
Just to give people a background of how I know you, I think I first met you through an interview process. And you had just finished high school, right?
Yeah.
And I remember apologizing because the age limit did not allow you to take up the post. But I kept an eye, and I must say that I'm really proud of you and what you have done. So today we are talking about young women and involvement in peace processes. Mm-hmm. And I was reading and getting ready for this podcast. I learned that only is it 6%?
Yeah. So in peace processes between 1992 and 2019, according to UN Women, only 13% of women, only 13% of the people involved were women, and only 6% were involved as mediators or as signatories to peace processes, and 13% were involved as peace negotiators, and this is quite a low number. If you're talking about global peace processes and 13%, that's quite low when you look at the contribution that women make. And the numbers go even lower for young women because of other challenges. So, maybe young women are not certified as mediators, they're not included in these peace processes. Most of peace processes look at young women as beneficiaries rather than actors.
Yes. Actors,
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, major peace processes.
Yeah.
I think for us Kenyans, because we've not lived in the times of war, I think when you talk about peace processes, most of us tend to think about post-election violence.
Yes.
And I was having a conversation with a former commissioner, and when we look at the peace process that we had as Kenyans, we don't see the role that women played.
Yes.
But we had people like, Tekla Namachanja,
yes.
We had the late Deka Ibrahim, who played, were part and parcel of the peace deal, but we never saw their names embedded on somewhere.
Yes.
And one of the things that I would want to ask, and this applies for older women, younger women, is what are the social norms that we hold that do not allow us to see women as, active actors, but see them only as beneficiaries? What are those social norms?
I think the social norms, first of all, is just the way in which we grow up seeing women or perceiving women. So we see women in local peace processes, but we do not view them as peace processes. When you look at family, in the context of families, women are the ones who hold families together. When you look at neighborhoods, they're the ones who, keep communities together, but we don't view those processes as or their contribution as important or as making meaningful contribution. And so even at the higher level where you're talking about national peace processes, it's very easy to overlook the role in which the women play. And there's also the element of tokenism where you're involving particular women just to tick the box. And so even when the women are in the room, because of their voices are overshadowed by everyone else. And then also because of just how public opinion also, public opinion shapes policy. So there's also that perception. What will people think if it's a woman that's negotiating a deal with Somalia?
Does that mean that people are space?
Yes. So we're always looking at women as the weaker being, and the elements in which make people view women like that are actually the elements that make them the best peace builders and leaders. You're talking about empathy. You're talking about softness. Being brave enough, and just having that kind heart. These are things that people perceive as weak, but when you're looking at leadership, especially in communities where you're dealing with diverse people, diverse challenges, these are the key elements. These are what makes the best leaders. And you can see it from how countries where women are leading, you can look at how they responded to the pandemic.
That is true.
How those countries are actually recovering, and when you look at countries where it's men in the leadership, it's very different, because women lead from a point of empathy. Now it's the same. These norms are this like what you perceive as weak is actually what makes women strong. I know it sounds cliche, but it actually is true. And then something else is that women are still underrepresented in every space, except in casual labor. That's where women are they make up the majority of the population. So it is as though to say that we only appreciate women when it's either unpaid labor or casual labor. But even in workspaces, even in governments, you can see how women take the heat when they make mistakes as compared to male counterparts. And this is not to say that, excuse women for their mistakes, but we're saying let's have the same standard of integrity. Let's have the same standard of leadership, because this then means that women can get into more decision-making spaces. And the more the merrier, because they represent a diverse group of women. Even I, as Wevyn, cannot say I speak for young women. I cannot even speak for young women from Mombasa. I cannot even, so there's all these demographics to individuals, and that's why there's an element of inclusion, but there's an element of representation.
That's true, and most of the times we don't make.
And sometimes we confuse the two. So it's not enough to include us. We want to be represented in all our diversity.
That is true. But when you talk about representation and inclusion, it brings me to the point where we have had this rhetoric of 60% of Africa's population is young. And therefore, I have seen reports saying that then if that is not tapped, it's going to be problematic, and it's going to be problematic in ways that affect peace and security. But then one question I have for you is that most of these policies define youth as male, and so even when we talk about peace and security, the eye view of what youth is male, and then we talk about women, it's the older women, right? So it's that the younger woman who wants to be part and parcel of peace building or peace and security is almost left out. And actually it's left out. So what are the sections that agencies or actors are missing in terms of meaningfully involving the younger women?
So there's like the youthful population, and even when you translate it to Swahili and you say kijana, most people when they say huyu kijana, it's always referring to a man. So it's something that's
so synonymous.
It's synonymous to male youth. And then when people are saying now we need women, you want the older women because you think they're more experienced. They're maybe easier to work with, because when you're young, it's most times you're radical, and then when you're a young woman, the challenges are so different. So your passion to do better, to change things, it's almost as though people cannot really contain and work with your energy.
That is true.
So there is that. I think it's intentional to leave young women out, but then there are also oversights. So young people perceived as males, and then women, it's the older women. Young women face certain challenges that also exclude them socially. There's societal norms like you're expected to get married, so everyone is thinking your contribution will not last because it's just a matter of time.
You're facing out.
Yes, it's almost like your prime. Young women are looked at as there's a certain age where you're prime, and after that there's no value.
How sad.
Yeah, how sad. And so
some of the situations are ridiculous.
Yeah. And when we're talking about decision making and who should be in the room, who is not in the room, it's almost as though young women are struggling to find their space in the room. You're trying to prove that you can do it, as opposed to your male counterparts. Even in hiring, you're like, oh, she's young. Many people actually, even in Kenya, they want to hire young women only because they're single and they can work longer hours. That's the only way you measure up to the potential of a man. That's how it's perceived, you know? Yeah, and so it's just, I always say that it's not different in governments, in decision-making processes. Some of these practices, some of the ways in which we live our lives at home, in our neighborhoods, translate to that. Because if you do not trust me enough in just an office setting, then how would you trust me with your government?
That is true. And we need to see how it translates to...
Yes, so that perception... we need to look at women differently, and we need to look at young women more than just objects of marriage, sexual objects, mothers to be. We need to just see them for who they are. And
and that sometimes is brilliant and merits and good things.
Yeah.
Now, you reminded me of a story that one of my older, used to tell me, and I think she read it from a book from Toni Morrison. She said, you know what, in African context, older women are given more respect than the younger men. Yeah. And so for her, she learned how to dress up as an old woman. She would wear wigs. Yeah. And only because she wanted to say something and be heard, because she was leading a production unit. And every time she spoke to the younger men, as a young girl, no one would hear her. Yeah. But if she disguised herself as an older woman, and hold her hands to her waists, and I found that ridiculous. But every time I think about it, every time I think about myself, I wish I knew that trick. But away from notes of life, I will ask this: conflict has changed in many ways. So I think one of the things that we saw as a headliner in Kenya is when young women, had gone to Somali and others were on their way to Syria. And when you and I have worked in informal settlements, I keep saying that that is not, it doesn't not make headlines or makes headlines once in a while, because I think I saw a story in the Standard or the Nation recently. Women are now part of the armed conflict or armed groups. We see them either as part of gangs or actually playing active roles in violent extremist groups. And I don't think policy has caught up with that, or even public perception. What would you say about why we're missing this?
So for young women, the motivation to join extremist groups is quite different. I'd say from my experience, young women are lured into these groups for material gain, or as a way of I don't know how to put it, but you're recruited to be a wife to the soldiers, to the people fighting, or you're recruited. So that applies to women maybe from lesser privileged backgrounds. And then you have those who are, well-educated, elite young women who are recruited then to provide services like nursing, doctors. But basically, you can see that the role is as caregivers and not really as active frontline, on the front lines. I haven't actually heard of women at the front lines. There's that talk, but there isn't research that says, women now are at the front lines of this. Because even the extremist groups, how they work is it's deeply entrenched in patriarchy.
That is true. That is very true.
And that's, so they still perceive these women as caregivers. They still see them as, supporting us in this fight. So For young women, I think I can say that the numbers are not very high, but they're increasing. They're not alarmingly high, but the numbers are getting higher as we go by. For some, it's for revenge. I think at the coast of Kenya and northeastern, we've heard of where families, all sons and the fathers are taken by whoever, mostly just forcefully disappeared. And they never return. So you find the wives or the daughters joining these groups to seek revenge or to continue with the mission, especially if their relatives were actively involved and they knew this information. So they see this as taking up the baton and continuing with the fight.
So we see the same social norms play out even with violent extremist groups or armed groups.
Exactly. And also this norm, and I'll speak again to the push around young women getting married. And when you're given an opportunity to get married to a fighter, it is very different. Especially if you grow up all your life thinking you're a second class person. And here is a chance for you to actually be part of, a big story, because they see themselves as heroes. So it's very psychological, and I see it as a trauma response actually. So there's that, or you've been so closed, and now here's an opportunity for you to finally be away from people who've been controlling you, not knowing that you're going to have the same control in the
and perhaps in more
because how they recruit is brainwashing, and they promise you better, but in reality it's not a better life.
That's true. Well, it's good to get the clarification about the roles that women play in armed conflicts. Is it the same with the locally bred gangs?
So like when I used to work with the gang groups in Mombasa, we had young girls, and the girls were way younger than the boys actually.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Why is it so?
I think because some of the boys who are also young, like teenagers, they would be looking for sort of girlfriends.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
so the younger, the more impressionable.
Yes.
Okay.
And then also it's just that puberty stage as well. So just the same way a 16-year-old boy would have like a 14-year-old girlfriend.
So it plays out.
So it plays out the same. But one thing that I found interesting is that in one of these groups, the girls were used to set the trap.
What do you mean set the trap?
Because you would trust a 14-year-old girl more than a 14-year-old boy. So they'd be like, this idea, they're baits. They talk to you so that they can distract you, so that the boys can stab you or whatever.
But it's sad how the social norms play out even in such spaces. Yeah. Then we tend to, want to take care of girls.
Yes. You want to protect them. You're wondering, well, why is she standing in a dark alley alone at night? So, that intuition, it's really so twisted.
That is true.
Yeah.
It takes me back to why a friend of mine keeps saying he doesn't forgive himself for ever leaving a girl on the road. And she didn't know whether she was safe or not, but he had had enough of those stories that he didn't know what he was.
And it plays out also in the bigger groups like Al-Shabaab. Women, I think there was a story of the Black Widows, is White Widow. And security-wise, I think the men will tell you when they walk into buildings, they go through more scrutiny than women. So it's the same mentality that extremist groups are using. Like, if you go in as a woman, you're less likely to be suspected. And then most times, this security is not gender friendly. So I can easily say, no, you can't search me. I need a woman to search me.
And if the security guys
are men. So if there aren't any men to search me, then I'll pass. And you don't know what I'm carrying. You don't know how. Just another example, I think in Nairobi, there was a time a man was dressed as a woman, and they would lure other men into hotel rooms and steal from them. So it's I
think that's a best story to tell when we look at how we play ourselves by subscribing to some of the social norms. When you think a woman is weak, but
you actually think I'm weak. Okay, just wait and find out. So it's Yeah.
And that the gangs have actually exploited that. Or I think that would be research.
I always say that extremist groups and gangs are always ahead of us because they are always trying to recruit the best brains. They are heavily financed. And when you have money, you can control a lot of things. You can buy the best talent. You can buy the most dangerous weapons. You can hide. And in a country that really a lot of people benefit from corruption, you can buy the system.
That is true.
So you've bought your own protection, you can buy the judge, and so it becomes very difficult to even get justice. Yeah.
And when you say that extremist groups or violent groups are usually ahead of us, it beats me how they are effectively able to analyze our cultural norms.
Yeah.
And maximize on that. And I think that's one of the things that workers in peace building or governments or agencies are actually missing. Like we don't pay enough attention to the cultural the social cultural factors.
Yeah, and I think generally peace building work is I'd say most is anchored on totally different things, and then we have extremists and we have peace builders. The way I see it, we're supposed to be on the same path, using the same narratives but pushing for a different agenda.
Tell me more.
The same way, so when you're looking at young people, most of these gangs, the young men mostly I talk to, they're looking for, how you're radical, you want to be heard, but you feel like you're too poor, you're too small for this country to listen to you. But if you stab someone with like a bicycle spoke, that's gonna be news in KTN tomorrow. Now, peace building should be about transforming that power that those young people have. How do you transform that power? How do you transform the power of the gun? Because the gun gives these young people power. It gives them this
agency, a feeling of agency.
Yes, I am powerful. I can do something. It just takes me one act for this whole community to stop and want to find me. They want to know who I am.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised that's just what young people want. Some of these young people in groups, they just want to belong, to be heard. They want to know that someone cares. And you don't have that. And it's worse when you come from informal settlements. It's very difficult because even in social settings, even the way we socialize is that the higher social capital you have, the more respect you have.
The more power to do things.
I mean, an easy example is what do you do? Because then they can know how to treat you, how to talk to you. So imagine asking someone like, what do you do? They're not in school. They don't have a job. Their family, that's a broken family. So there's nothing to me other than if I pick up a weapon, then there's something. So transforming this power and giving young people alternatives to using this power. So how do you make their voice matter? How do you show them that they are important, that their contribution is valued, that if and when they are able to get out of these difficult living situations, that they will be valued? Because I remember one of them asking me, we're here, we're talking about this, but even you're crying about the government and you're in a way better situation than you are. So is there really any hope?
Oh wow, that's a hard question.
Is there anything for us, especially young people, when, I don't know, sometimes even myself, it really puts me down. But I think that we have to keep trying and we have to give young people options. These options could be sports, it could be art, it could be, just give them something to do. Have them do something. It's not even about the income, it's about them being productive and feeling like, we actually, I'm meaning to.
This one meaningful expression of what it is. I'm going to say that because I think for the longest time I have shied away from quoting research that show that because you're economically deprived,
Yeah.
therefore then you're likely to join another group or a violent extremist group. Because I don't think. Well,
it's not 100% true, but it's a contributor.
It's a contributor.
Yeah.
But then it's that what you explained is that we have left young people to a highly concentrated feeling of powerlessness.
Yeah.
Whether it's meaningful participation in politics, whether it's the quality of services they get in terms of public services like schools, hospital, that they actually feel helpless. And so, as you said earlier, for them to feel like meaningful or powerful, they end up going to the other side of the spectrum.
How are we like the biggest population, but also the poorest?
Yeah, that's what it says. Yeah,
yes, we live in a democracy, so the systems. I think the way the system is set up is such that young people continue to be at the mercy of those who, and if we don't deal with this, then we get older and become the old people that we used to hate.
Yeah, that's true. Which is sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is sad. And now we have seen that replicated over and over. Now, before we lose the track about young people, go to young people and talk about women specifically.
Yeah.
I would ask, looking at the participation of, I am proud of you and where you've come. We're going to talk about your recent job and how that has changed in terms of perspective.
Yeah.
But what's your boldest solution to some of these things? Young people in general in terms of participation in peace and security, but also the place of a young woman in peace and security.
I think my solution to every problem is caring together for one another. And I feel like it's simple, but it's very radical because we live in a world where we are looking out for me. What's in it for me? What do I get? It's me. And we forget that we don't live in isolation. We live in communities, and that the challenges that we face are because there are people in our communities that are not cared for.
That's true.
So we don't realize that we're in this difficult situation. Like we work, we earn money, but we don't see the value of it. We don't. You're talking about water shortage. We're talking about a housing problem. So all these challenges, until we realize that we are so interconnected and so interdependent, and really we can't solve everything without including everyone.
That is true. And when you say that, what it brings me to is that we tend to see peace and security as an end to something.
Yeah.
Like we are preventing post-election violence, or preventing that, but we don't realize that the work that is needed between now and the next event, which could be violence, which is equity, which is consideration, as
inclusion,
you said, which is inclusion.
Because these are the things that trigger violence. Why do I need to fight you? Why do I feel there's scarcity. I have to get rid of you for me to live. Tribalism is like the best example in Kenya of exclusion.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And
others feel like they're lesser tribes. They're not included in government. They're not included even in workspaces. They're not in. It's about inclusion.
So if you're talking about tribes, and this is a question that you and I may not have an answer to, if we're at the point where we're talking about tribes, when do we reach the young woman in Kenya? Like if the conversation is still about ethnicities and social classes.
Yeah. I think as a generation we're really trying. And I'm a millennial, and I think that millennials are in little ways and in very unique ways dealing with this tribalism issue. We are dating different races.
That's true.
We are going to school with different tribes. Our best friends are from different tribes. I honestly can't remember the last time. I don't even think if I have I do, but it's not usually the determining factor
of your friendships,
of any relationship, or even workspaces. So every generation, and I think Gen Z is even better. the TikTok
Do
generation.
you think they're more inclusive? They're easier to include younger women.
Yeah.
Like
if you go to TikTok, and a lot of couples that do TikTok videos, it's interracial couples.
That is true.
So you can see that it's these small things, because the way we grow up, the things we see on our TV, the things we see on our screens, these are the things that shape our perspectives on life.
So do you think that when Generation Z is in the offices and managers, we'll perhaps have more women?
I think so.
In the space?
I think so, because young women are really pushing. I think I know so many young women that are just doing above and beyond.
That's true.
I think we have refused to be put down by the system, and we are fighting. We shouldn't have to, but
I hear you.
Yeah, we shouldn't have to, but that is our reality.
So there's more hope that more young women will be positioned.
Yeah, of power. And I always say that the women who make it to bigger rooms have the obligation to bring in more women.